Hello, everyone. This is Michael Rice, aka The Connector, and we're here on the New Urban Network for another edition of The Connector Live. Now, The Connector Live was developed to spotlight those exceptional individuals within our community who are doing magnificent things. I have a spectacular guest who's super qualified to talk about these things and more. But before we get into it and I'll tell you a little bit about them, let me just say I want to start off with a quote for a theme for the day. My book, Be Magnificent, Exceed Your Expectations, is available on Amazon. And I'm not going to quote from me, but one of my favorite speakers, authors, and leaders is in this. So the quote starts is, the ultimate challenge, or the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands during moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands during times of challenge and controversy.
Wow.
I think that's so significant to what our conversation is going to be about. Matter of fact, what this program is about these individuals who act in spite of circumstances and situations and able to keep keep their character and integrity, and then add that value to their community.
Yes.
So our guest for the day is Dr. Keith Marshall, and Dr. Marshall is a CEO and owner of Untitled Treatment Center, Inc., which is one of the only few African American men who owns and operates a licensed residential and outpatient addictions treatment and mental health facility in California. Dr. Marshall's agency is also one of only 6% of all the treatment centers in the country that is accredited by the Joint Commission, which is the highest level of accreditation for mental health agencies. Dr. Marshall's publications and research includes his dissertation exploring human development and risk factors associated with adolescent substance abuse, and a master's thesis exploring psychopathology and low self-esteem and its correlation with adolescent substance abuse. He's also in the process of writing his own book entitled From Fear to Faith to Freedom. So Dr. Marshall not only helps people suffering from addiction and mental health issues, he's also a motivational speaker, an educator with a mission of helping people overcome self-destructive thinking and behaviors, with the idea of helping them experience a more happier and useful and productive life. So we're going to learn more about as it goes on. So let's welcome and bring him on in here, Dr. Keith Marshall.
Hello, how you doing, Mike?
Hey, how's it going?
Well, it's going pretty good given the times. It's stressful on everybody right now.
Right.
But, to say anything is you got to find the gratitude even in the midst of it all. So
right.
Appreciate you, having this time to talk to me, and maybe let's explore some ideas and talk about some things. Hopefully, inspire one person to, do what Michael Jackson says in the song, "Man in the Mirror, make the changes that we need to make in ourselves."
Right.
That can bring about more productive lives, and maybe we can inspire other people. So.
One of the things in my book, I spotlight individuals within the community who've taken their struggle, their pain, and turned it around and use it as fuel to motivate them to do magnificent things, to go to higher lengths and just to magnify their impact upon the world.
Yeah.
So I want people to know your story. So can you just bring us up there? I mean, I'm never to tell everything, but bring us up to date, the things that you went through to bring you to the point where you're able to say, no, not only that you were scholarly, because you definitely got the educational qualifications, but you got that street knowledge that's combined with that makes you such an awesome individual.
Yeah, well, first I want to say congratulations on your book, and I pray that many will read it, because being magnificent is pretty much, I think, the ideal that we can all make for ourselves. what's magnificent to me may not be magnificent to you. But one thing I can think that we can universally talk about is that you have to be principle driven and not feeling driven to even experience what magnificence is. So I think that, you know, that's a fitting title. My life, if you want to call it, I had a struggle. And so let's put it to become magnificent, if you will. I think that we all determine what success is and what being magnificent is individually. So I like the title because it gives people the idea of measuring themselves. At the end of the day, I just believe that the things that happen in our life can either define us, help us, or we continue on that road of self-destructive thinking. You know, I was born in the city of Philadelphia, and I grew up in a very low social economic setting. We were right across the street from the projects and some low income housing. And I think that the reason why I say that is because sometimes our environment, not only outside the home, but the environment in the home, it is a part of developing the formation of how I think or how we think as human beings. You know, long story short is, as I grew up in a very low socioeconomic setting, my mother struggled while she was also going to school, raising three young men, and me and my two brothers, with a stepfather who had happened at the time to be pretty abusive, if you will. I don't need to identify who he is today. I've totally forgiven him, and because that was part of the journey anyway. I think what happened is, along the way, what I found out for myself, along discovering who I was, is that you know, we have those outside factors, and then we have the family factors that, as we grow up, we start to internalize the world in a very unique way. In my world, if you call my internal world, I started to think I had ideas about myself that I wasn't good enough. The relationship I had with my mother was a struggle early on, but as a kid, we're pretty much egocentric. We're not looking at what parents or older people in our lives are doing. We can only see ourselves. We can only desire the things that we want for ourselves. So we all interpret the world individually in very unique ways. Choice and the ideal of choice becomes very profound as we get older, because, you know, along the way, as I was a kid growing up, I made lots of bad choices and I made some good choices. The bad choices were being around some of the people who were not going in the right direction at certain times in my life. And the good choices were probably in high school, when I chose to play football and run track. And if anything, I think in that stage of my life where that role identity and role confusion stage is relevant, I was able to, mitigate my internal stress that was unbeknown to myself at the time, meaning that I had a lot of low self-worth and low self-esteem. I was always seeking approval and validation, primarily from mom, based on the way I interpreted the information that I got from mom growing up. Long story short.
Where do you think that came from? Why is that?
I didn't say that again.
Why is that? Why did you feel so bad about yourself early on?
Well, I think what happens is, like I said, as children, we grow up. We can all grow up in what seems, 5 people can grow up in what seems to be a very positive world that they're living in, but each individual internalize that world, albeit from some of the nonverbal and some of the verbal realities that they hear, see, and experience. For me, I think there were what I've been able to explore is that sometimes the interaction with my mother was difficult for me because I perceived it in my own unique way. His perception is very powerful and blinding because we all have our own perception. And without enough knowledge and enough self-exploration, we can work a lot off of distorted reality. You know, things that we hear and say, things that we hear and things that we see and how we interpret it. You know, there's how you interpret it, there's what's really going on, and then there's the truth in it all. You know, and what part am I playing in it has to be the resolve piece. So, you know, I think it was just simply the communication patterns that were going on within my family, great things and some of the most difficult things. And I interpreted the world in very unique ways for myself. And what I'm saying is that when I look back, I had a very low self-worth, or I had a low concept of self. That negative self-talk became very profound, very loud in my head, although very subconscious in the way I roll about life. And I give you examples that.
So Keith, was that because your parents wasn't reinforcing, because we know that the environmental factors in terms of your parenting affects your self-esteem. Your environmental factors, teachers, people around you affect that.
Right.
So was that it? It wasn't being real, because you were saying about it was a relationship thing. I mean, a lot of, I want to say this because I'm in mentoring programs, part of Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and all like that, and I'm in groups with young people.
Yes.
And they're going to be watching this.
Yes.
And
Well,
I want to make sure that it doesn't go over the head what you're saying. You're saying something very significant in terms of a lot of them in the household with the mothers.
Right.
And a lot of them have, I mean, I never knew it until I started doing the mentoring. When I said, love them like you love your mother, they said, I don't love my mother. A lot of them, their mother was the cause of a lot of things, bad things in their lives. So that's what they perceived. So they didn't understand the adult thing.
Yeah, well, childhood and growing up is very difficult in and of itself. There's stages of life and stages of growth. And what usually happens is, unfortunately, that even in our newer ages of life, the social media has become a very powerful, sometimes even a debilitating factor in how we perceive the world in terms of affirming ourselves. I mean, a lot of times, even if the parents are affirming us, they're still bombarded with so much from the outside that says, well, for example, there's a lot of social media having cars and money, and there's nothing wrong with having things. But if your pursuit of happiness is pursuit of things, you're going to lose right there in the beginning. And a lot of the kids in our universe, unfortunately, a lot of the kids that live in some of the poor economic settings that, like the one I grew up in, we got a lot to deal with. One, we got to go to school. And if we're not getting affirmation at home, and even if we are getting it, we're not interpreting it that way, we're still up against the meanness of the world, less than, feeling not worthy. The process of human development is very complex, meaning that our children, our younger adults need to understand that just because things that are going on outside of them, like I say, struggles in the family, breakdown in communication in the family, maybe mom and dad's not affirming them enough, maybe mom and dad's not spending enough time with them, not because they don't love them, but maybe the stressors on their own life to fulfill the basic needs of making sure that there's a roof over their head and making sure there's food in their stomach, and not understanding that they also have uniquenesses in how they're dealing in society that's affecting them, and they come home and project it. It is really, really a complex reality. What I'm hoping that younger adults understand is that they still have the power of choice even when it doesn't feel good. And they may not grow up in a setting that, based on what they see socially, makes or validates them from the way. Their validation has to come from within. I know it's hard to understand that. So what does that mean, the validation from within? So first of all, as I was growing, I started playing football when I was growing up. It gave me, let's call it, an outlet. So being active and participating in something was a good thing for me. But what wasn't the greatest is that I still wasn't mitigating, because I didn't know that. And my family didn't have the communication skills to where we would sit down and we would be assertive and understand what's assertive communication and interacting, and everybody's feelings are irrelevant. Everybody was in survival mode. And so for me, I'm just only going to look at myself, is that football and track and field became an outlet in those really, really hard years where we're trying to gain social connectedness, emotional security, being accepted by others, not even knowing that we don't even accept ourselves sometimes. Our inner worlds, my inner world was struggle. I was garbled with confusion. I didn't know, who to trust. I mean, based on how I interpreted my relationship with my mom. My stepdad was very abusive, verbally and non-verbally. And so as a kid growing up, when you see one thing in the world that tells you that this is where you're supposed to gain your strength, and then you're home in a dichotomous atmosphere, which means a very opposite atmosphere of experiencing danger and confusion and being afraid, that all formulates how you think about yourself, all of it usually without even knowing it. And so I was going through high school with low self-worth, always wanting to fit in, but had an outlet. so that I was able to, what they call, have a distraction, if you will, to not, because I felt accepted. I was accepted on the football team. I was accepted on the track and field team. And so there was a moment of mitigation that wasn't me trying to mitigate, but had something external helping me to fit in, because I knew that happened because once I got out of high school, I did pretty good in school. Some of that was built-in stuff. I was a pretty good student, but mom also instilled some great things. I mean, mom wasn't about your mom was about her business. She was becoming a nurse in the midst of all her own abuses that she was getting from my stepdad. Plus, she was trying to raise 3 young sons in the hood. I mean, you know, that's, you got the gangs, you got the environment trying to get our attention, then you got her being abused verbally and non-verbally and physically by my stepdad, and then now trying to raise 3 young boys who are about 1.5 years apart from each other. What about her world was being very complex that I couldn't understand? And of course I couldn't understand at the time, because like I said, that we're very egocentric in these years. We're pretty much looking out for ourselves, and it's just the way we grow.
Say that, I must get in there saying that both of your brothers are very successful individuals as well.
Yes, my one brother's a firefighter for the last, Kevin's a firefighter for 30 years.
The advantage of having 3 sons that turn into professionals, hey, who live to be professionals is.
Yeah. Like I was saying, Kenny became, he worked with the state police and state prisons for 30 years. Kevin, he's still working as a Philadelphia firefighter. As I get into my story, I started to hang around. See, this is the power of choice, and I hope that some people understand. Everybody doesn't always make good choices or always make bad choices. But when we make some choices can be profound. When I got out of high school and then going to my first year of college at Temple University, at the time, I'm still feeling, feelings of inadequacy, low self-worth, all unbeknown. I'm not knowing this is happening, but I know it's happening because when I look back, I was always putting on masks, always was meeting women. You know, if I was at a club, I'd have a $100 bill with one rolled under it to, don't you know who you think I am? Always trying to feel that I could, to fit in, looking for validation, looking for self-worth, looking for somebody to not reject me. Very, very hard existence. And so I never, when I fell into drugs, because this is where we're actually going with this, I was in my on campus, and I could remember hanging around some of the wrong people. And I say wrong people because they were into drugs. And here I'm just innocently trying it out. You know what I mean? I'm not looking to be a drug addict. And I didn't say, Mom, I want to grow up and be a crackhead. But in that era of cocaine in the 80s,
right,
crack hit the street. Here I am, a young man. I had some great values, but that's probably where I'm at today, of hard work. However, I didn't know that when I took that first hit of cocaine, being, influenced by a peer, and to try it felt good. That's all I know. It just felt good at the time. But what really happened was it mitigated or removed or reduced some of that internal stress of feeling not good enough. Gave me a false sense of power. That's why it's very, very important for our young men and women, even our older adults, that you don't know who you are individually. Genetic predisposition to becoming an addict or an alcoholic can be unknown in anybody. People don't just grow up and say they want to be dope fiends or addicts. And no one knows who's going to have a be genetically predisposed in their family. Long story short, when I got high for my first time, and I'm just trying to have fun and, hang out with the crowd, trying to be a part of something like a lot of our youngsters and even some of our adults still do today, trying to look for validation, it did something for me that I couldn't do for myself at the time. And what it did was it gave me a false sense of courage. And so I could walk around the club and get in the girls' faces, started to feel like I was powerful, not realizing that the cocaine had made some real biophysiological changes in my brain that I didn't know at the time. So it wasn't like I was trying to get high and wanted to be a loser, because what it did was it ended up taking control of me because I didn't know any better, although I knew better not to do the drugs. But like any other teenager, I experimented, Some teenagers don't experiment. There are choices we make along the way in life, some profound, some very subtle, that could have a profound effect later, some not so great. So I'm not saying that everybody's going to go down a road where they're going to make bad choices at a young age, and then it's going to live itself out through the rest of their life. But choice can be very powerful and blinding, especially when you have an internal world, like that self-talk that tells you you're not good enough. And so the long story short for me is that I started hanging around the wrong people. I wasn't hanging around winners. And what that did for me when I started to get high and mess around, I started to take control. I still had gifts because I was able to get, I could remember, first of all, let me just say, when I started messing around with drugs and then cocaine started to take over my life in the early 80s, I was in my sociology class and I left class to get high and never went back. So people need to know that at 19, I was able to get into Temple University. I was a high school athlete, still walk around a lot of low self-worth, but I was a pretty popular athlete in school, me and my brother. So it mitigated, if you will, it reduced that whole, I got to fit in with everybody. I was a part of something. But man, when I got on that campus at Temple, I felt like a tiny ant without knowing it. I wasn't popular anymore. That loneliness overwhelmed me. And when I say it overwhelmed me to a point that I didn't know that I was on this chase to seek attention. I needed to feel validated without knowing that need for validation would drive me to places, would cause me, in our humanness, in our psyche structure, we think, which induces feelings, which induces what they call compensatory measures. I didn't know all this stuff at the time. Right. But in reality, most often I was working in a fear-dominated world. I felt fearful of everything. Fear of rejection, not approval, fear of failure, fear of success. And the fear of success became more when cocaine started to dominate my life, because I knew intuitively at the time that no how much I tried to do, there had to be something divine, something had to happen to remove the craving. See, some people will look at a cocaine addict or a heroin addict or an alcoholic and just call them, some weak, you just maybe disgusting human beings based on some of the consequences of what addiction does. But I beg to differ, that there really is a biophysiological change in the brain that happens to some people where, for example, 10 people can sit down at the bar and for some reason one person can't get up. And then the other 9 will judge them. Well, look, man, we could get up and go stop and go on to work. But there are some real biophysiological changes in the brain that happens with people who become susceptible to becoming addicts or alcoholics or becoming addicted. However, I didn't know that at the time. And so cocaine started to dominate my life. And so although I could get jobs, I was getting these pretty good jobs. I was working in housekeeping and supervision management. I was able to get a job as a supervisor, my first job in a laundry, supervisor at a nursing home, 5 employees under me. I just, I had to give a gab, and I always had some type of leadership in me. However, at that time, it was just to get a job, and it was just to keep working. The skills and the gifts the gifts were still there, but at the same time, I was living a double life. I was very promiscuous as a young man, I'm not gonna lie to you. I fathered children at that time in my life. I can't take all the blame because there were mothers involved, but I had to take full responsibility. There was a part in being a father that first of all, I didn't know how to be a father. Second of all, I had an addiction controlling my life. No excuses here. There was a whole deadbeat reality in that. And I'm gonna make that very clear. I was irresponsible. I was selfish due to some of my choices. And when I started doing cocaine, and then it started to dominate my mind, meaning that I became preoccupied with using and finding ways to use to a point where I was in a seamlessly hopeless state of mind and body. And that's why I hope that people understand, don't mess with this thing, man. Drugs is no joke. Back in my time, the president at the time was Ronald Reagan. His wife put on this "Say No to Drug" campaign, just say no. And those words, yet they're very profound, because if kids walk into the whole drug and alcohol world already feeling bad about themselves, It's like rolling the dice with your life because you don't know how it's going to dominate you and make you feel good and give you a false sense of reality that will lead you down a life that you may not be able to recover from.
It is so unfortunate because I know during that same era, like you said, when drugs became prevalent within the communities, it was flooded in the communities.
Right.
Actually,
Yeah.
movies was depicting how cool it was to snort cocaine and to get high and all like that. That was the lifestyle. So you as a young person, that's something you would aspire to. So I could understand how you can be influenced saying, oh, let me go ahead and do this coke. I'll be cool. Right.
And it was that thought. When I was in the nightclub the first time, it was serendipity, and my boss said, "Hey man, let's try some of this." My perception of cocaine at the time, that it was the white rich man's high. Where did I learn that on TV? Now I'm not blaming anybody. What I'm saying is, I simply being around somebody, being 19 years old, with low self-esteem that I didn't even realize or recognize was happening to me, it made me feel good. There's no lie about it. That's what but I didn't know that it was going to encode messages in my brain that were going to take me down a road to hell that, my God, I feel just to be alive today is already one thing. To go to where I've gone in my life, we'll get there. But I just want the audience to know that a lot of people who get hooked up on the drugs don't mean to become drug addicts or alcoholics. Now, so here I am walking around with low self-worth, low self-esteem. Yes, and because of it, I'm trying to mitigate those internal stressors, manipulating, putting on a mask. I thought I was a fairly good-looking guy at the time. So, of course, like anything else, I'm chasing women, and selfishly doing it too at their emotional expense. Sometimes it's very dangerous to have low self-worth, because if you're always trying to seek validation at the expense of another human being, and that human being may have a different sense of self, they're going to always get hurt when you get exposed, and you will get exposed. So, never really trying to be hurtful to others. I know I hurt people along the way. And of course, I've made a lot of amends along the way. I've done that, whether people accept it or not. So here I am now, a young man, dropped out of college. I'm chasing cocaine. Cocaine's chasing me, but I'm definitely chasing it. Not wanting to. I became addicted. It started leading me in places that, for example, I would get a job, lose a job, get a job, lose a job, get in relationship with girls, always thinking that if I could maybe sex them and charm them real well, they would like me. But then I'm, not only just being promiscuous, but it starts to manifest more negative behaviors, which comes from that self-destructive thinking. So more lying, more cheating, nothing that I'm proud of, more stealing, missing in action, dad, not being responsible, irresponsible. This isn't everybody's story. I know that. I know that people go other paths and create different realities for themselves, but so there's no excuses here. But if I'm going to be transparent, the hope is that people understand fundamentally that self-destructive thinking, especially unbeknown, meaning I don't even know that I don't know that I'm acting in self-destructive thinking, which is, forcing feelings on me. Because remember, my thinking produces my feeling. So if subconsciously I'm afraid of the world, I don't think I'm good enough. And then consciously, I don't see the verbal or non-verbal affirmation, the subconscious starts to dominate. Then I start to put on more mass, because the feelings of fear, the feelings of not being validated, now I got to compensate. And these compensatory measures, humans most often don't even know that we're acting or reacting often on what we feel, and not principle-driven people. At this time, I didn't know what
thoughts, stinking thinking.
Thinking, brother. That's right. So, so if you want to call self-destructive thinking, stinking thinking, hey, whatever fits the bill for you. It's the same, right? And there's a lot of stinking thinking going on.
I'm sure the viewers will agree. Like I said, they understand that.
That's right. And I didn't mean a lot of it, man. My heart was never bad, but that doesn't mean anything, because a lot of times the world is not judging us by our motives; it was judging us by our actions. So, along my early adult life,
we're going at is because you're describing your mindset. all
Yeah.
during in your journey,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
You know, as long as your mind is in a certain way,
Yes.
certain things are going to happen.
Right.
So
And we're all unique individuals.
now on
Right.
these things that happen to you because of your mindset.
Right. And in my early 20s, like I said, first of all, one, you know, and I'm walking around with low self-esteem. I'm very lonely. And when I mean lonely, in a relationship and lonely, because just because you're with people, let's make this very clear, Mike. Just because you're around people or with people doesn't mean that you're not lonely. I was internally lonely, felt less than, needed validation, needed attention, not realizing I just, the self-affirmation wasn't present in life. I didn't have that. I wasn't driven off of that. And it wasn't mom or dad's fault. Mom did a lot of good things. Dad did some good things too. It's the uniqueness of individuality. So drugs also became a part of it, not because I was looking to be an addict. When I started messing around, it started to do something for me that I couldn't do for myself in the beginning, and then it turned on me. So when I got addicted, and then I'm still trying to be in social relationships. I'm a young man. I want a nice car like everybody else. I want a nice girl like everybody else. And then I'm living this double life. Probably a triple life, because the life I don't know is the one that's going on inside me, telling me I ain't good enough. The life that I'm living is what I'm trying to show you. And the one I don't know about is who am I? Are principles even working in my life intentionally? So I'm just a confused person. And in my confusion, I'm making bad choices, bad decisions, wrongful decisions, hurtful decisions that are not only hurting others, but also hurting myself and internalizing even more shame. And so remember, we have instincts to want to connect to each other. Those are instincts. They don't ask for our permission. We have instincts for social connectedness. So look at the power of this. If I have an internal, as you call, stinking thinking that I don't know that's happening, and I want to connect with somebody in the world, the stinking thinking is still is driving me. And now if stinking thinking is producing feelings, I got to mitigate this some kind of way without knowing I'm trying to compensate. So here's where it becomes very, I think when I say dangerous, very, very self-destructive in behavior, because now with stinking thinking or with self-destructive thinking, I'm still trying to connect to people socially. So now I can't be who I am because I don't know who I am. So I'm not living my authentic self. So what usually happens, you usually are going to lie or cheat or steal or manipulate. People who are in stinking thinking, that's people in general. At the time, me being in stinking thinking, there is a price to pay. You're going to feel something as a result of it. And because we have a nature to compensate for these what we call compensatory measures, to compensate for these feelings that often we don't even realize we're making decisions on, people will ultimately get hurt in this. So throughout these years, the addiction took me to some deep, dark places, man. I always knew, though, there were some guiding forces that were working against me and was some forces working for me. And I may say a little bit about God in this presentation with you, but it's not to tell everybody, but I will never apologize for my belief in God and having a root and fundamental ideal that there was a power greater than me. And I had dreams. I had all kinds of ominous warnings, if you will, to let me know that there was a power trying to help me. I wasn't surrendering to it, but I also had all the real things happen to me in some dreams that let me know there was also forces working against me. So addiction took me to, first, remember, I dropped out of college. I ended up losing every job that I had along the way. In and out of relation, I have 14 children. By the way, let me make sure everybody knows, and I'm not taking the credit for all of them. However, I know that my influence now, for at least 6 of them, I was dad present, and we'll get there. A lot of them are being impacted now because they know that I came out of what I came out of, and I took the responsibility. I apologize. And some of the child support money that I had owed, because I was like one of those guys that didn't pay child support but had the child support out there. It's all been taken care of, though. So that's toward the end of the story. But during the time, I was always seeking attention from women, and in doing the seeking attention from women, of course, I was lying and manipulating. In a low, living a double life. I truly knew that one day that some of that stuff would catch up with me, and it did. People got hurt along the way with my, and I've always apologized, and I've always never ever tried to escape the truth. You know, that I call a spade, and that's how I've been able to grow in my life. I was very selfish. I was very self-centered, sometimes not meaningly, but very operating off of faulty beliefs. And in that, people got hurt. And it's unfortunate, but it's a reality.
You said
Now,
people, only people, you got hurt, right?
of course I got hurt. I was probably the number, but I really want other, you know, the reality is that we still have to own that. I can't make excuses for my irresponsibility. I can't make excuses for it. There are people who make responsible choices at a younger age that leads them in another direction. And there are some like myself who can make irresponsible choices, that the one of getting high and trying to get high, I never knew I was going to become addicted. However, being around people who were getting high and then with the false belief that it was going to make me feel good, it took me somewhere. So long story short, addiction took me to homelessness, in and out of abandoned buildings, sleeping on Skid Row, getting a job, losing it, getting a job, losing it. Because I always had the desire to never give up, even though I had been in over 25 drug programs, man, and I completed them. I was really seeking answers. I was going to, I read the Quran, I read the Bible, I was seeking a higher power. The addiction was so powerful, it was so strong, that I didn't even know that I would ever have a chance. So I know there was been divine intervention in my life. Some people, man, that's nonsense. He just made a choice to get himself together. That's okay. You can believe what you want to believe. I know my life and my existence. I couldn't even keep $2 in my hand, meaning I would get some money and it would bring this phenomena, if you will, of craving, and I would obsession to go use. I would steal. I was locked up, in and out of jail for stealing, and like I said, I was living in the subways, living in abandoned buildings. I got shot in the head, point blank range. Bullets should have killed me, man. In an interaction of a drug. I'm coming back to apologize later for a guy that I got into a fight with earlier over drugs. And I was coming back to apologize because I wanted to sell him some things, and he thought I was coming to kill him. So he shot me. As soon as I walked up on him, I laid in a pool of blood. I got stabbed in a crack house. They were trying to rob me, and the lights in the house went out. They told me to get out the house. And I said, man, I'm not leaving till the lights come. A guy jumps across the bedroom, across the bed in the bedroom, and he starts stabbing me, man. And I jump out the second floor window, laying on the roof, bleeding profusely. I panhandled on the side of the freeway trying to get money. And this went on for about 20-something years. And in between time, I tried to clean up, get with a girl who would often, I think, see the best, some potential in me, until the drug expressed itself again, and here I am again, out on my butt. So, you know, in and out of jail, in and out of rehab, in and out of institutions, Mike, it hit me in the early 2000s. It hit me one night in my bed with a crack pipe in my mouth. So understand something, addiction was very real for me. I really never gave up, because I've been in and out of drug and alcohol treatment programs, thinking that was going to be the way out of, in and out of NA and AA and all these other things that keep me away from the DA. I did it. And right. I mean, I could not put the pipe down. I could not stop lying. I could not stop cheating. I messed up my credit. I had no finances. I ended up with a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. And then when I met my current wife, who I've been with now for 26 years, who for 9 years put up with it, she saw me when I got shot in the head. She was with me when I was going in and out of jail at the time. And she didn't give up, but she had probably some of her own issues. And by the way, you know, the journey goes that she went back to school. I put her back to school to get her bachelor. So we're getting this. So here's a young man in his early 30s and mid 30s, fully strung out on crack, out on the street. I got out to California because my first wife, my second wife that's it for me. My first wife had insurance, and it was pretty good. So they would fly me to California, and they would take me to different rehabs. And instead of me really seeking the help, I think most often I was caught up in hey, I'm in California. So right. I got back and forth here 3 times. And on the 3rd time, I had burned so many bridges and done so much stupidity in the hood with drugs that I ended up staying out here. And then I got a job within a month. And then, of course, I lost it right away because I was still trying to smoke crack. Ended up homeless out here on the streets and on Skid Row, living in a cardboard box. And this went on, man, on and off for years, man. I begged God over and over, man. I could remember, like I said, I'd be the first one at the altar when they had an altar call, trying to get this up off of me, man. Well, as it goes, there was a lot of tragedies. I've been run down by cars. I was beat down by baseball bat. There were many situations that showed me that the enemy was trying to kill me, not just make me suffer. So, I mean, when I say beat down with baseball bats, I mean beat down with baseball bats because I didn't have the money from the credit that I got for the drugs. When I say run over by a car, I'm walking down the street and this voice that I would hear me after years said, jump. And I turned around real quick and I jumped at the last minute. The guy hit me, almost took my foot off because of a drug deal earlier in that day where I got the drugs and I took the most of it. What I'm saying is crack cocaine and addiction, it robbed me of the very fabric of life. It not only robbed me, it caused me to steal and lie and cheat from so many people. You know what I mean? During my life, things that I was also bombarding more shame on my life. I had a brother who was in state prison police. He was doing his thing. I had a brother who was a firefighter, a mother who was a nurse. Before my father died, he was a paramedic. So what happened? I had some good stuff. That's maybe why I work so hard today. That was rooted in me. Decisions, man, choices can be profound. That one choice that I made in Serendipiti's nightclub to get high set my life on a trajectory, and I know my creator allowed it for his reason because of what I'm doing today. So long story short, I lost everything, Mike, everything. I lost my self-respect. I lost the respect from everybody. My credit was bad. I had no credit. Credit, what was that? I couldn't rub two nickels together. And one night, this is a true story, Mike. One night I'm in the bed and I'm seeing these demons around me. And I know people would probably think it was probably just him being hallucinatory due to his getting high. Call it what you want. In my world, I thought I was going to die. And as I was taking hits of crack, I just knew that I couldn't do it no more. And I said, I got to get on the floor and just lay my head down and tell the God, look, if you real, man, you're just going to have to kill me or free me. But I wanted to say I was really sorry for so much that I had done based on my addiction. So I mustered up the faith, and it had to be faith because I thought I was going to die. I jumped out of the covers and hit the floor. I was taking a hit, and I cried out. And I said, God, I beg you, please free me or kill me. Please free me or kill me. I've been smoking dope for all these years. Stealing and lying, in and out of jail, in and out of institutions. I couldn't even kill myself. I was too scared to kill myself. That's why this prayer, I just simply said, if you're real, kill me or free me. And this is the truth. I fell asleep. I found out later that it was pretty much impossible to do that because you have neurotransmitters in your brain, norepinephrine, epinephrine, fight or flight response neurotransmitters. When you hit coke, you can't just fall or sleep right away. Well, I fell asleep, and I found this out later when I went back to school. Long story short, the first miracle for me was that I got up in the morning and I took the drugs, I threw it down the toilet, and I threw away the pipe. For me, that was a miracle because at the time I was a crackhead. I'm gonna get my smoke on first. And then I'm going to say, God, help me after ain't none left. That didn't happen. I threw it away. And this is unbelievable. I remember my wife making me something to eat. I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning. I said, babe, I'm going to go out and I'm going to go get me a job. I went to a gym called Bodies in Motion over here in Pasadena. And they hired me right on the spot. I had to get the gap. I could get it. But what was profound about it, with it, I had certification as a professional trainer. That's why I'm in pretty good shape today. And I started long story short, I got my first paycheck, and I didn't know why I didn't want to get high. For me, that didn't make sense. That didn't make sense for me. So I started to manufacture thoughts because, like, wait a minute, that doesn't, hey, man, when you get a paycheck, you got to get high. Something happened. I realized later that when I surrendered, I stopped fighting. And I believe that the creator took away the obsession. But intuitively, I knew at that time I had to do some work on myself. I had to start. So I started reading books. I was too scared to go to school. And about 3 or 4 months, I became the #1 trainer at this gym. I started my own business called A New You Professional Fitness Training. I had up to about 60 pay clients. So I had the sublease a gym, and I just had the gift of really motivating people. Somebody said, man, why don't you go back to school? I said, man, look, I'm 38 years old. I'm not going back to school. I mean, I'm going to keep training. So I did that for a little while. And as a professional trainer, and I started to work on myself with the help of some spiritual advisors. I started to do self-exploratory work. And this is even before I went to school to become a doctor of psychology. I started to find out how my thinking had disrupted and had corrupted, if you will. My internal world was so corrupted with this negative self-talking that the only way I found that I was mitigating it was looking for external things to fix something that was really internally wrong. I started to, when I say become more spiritual, I stopped being religious. I started to practice. When I read the Bible now, I started to realize that it was going to make me uncomfortable to change. And this is something the audience need to hear.
What do you mean you stopped being religious? You became spiritual?
I stopped acting that if I acted out something and started living up under these tenets and I could do it on my own, like I had to prove something to God. I stopped trying to prove something to God and started asking God to help me. Mm-hmm. And I realized when he helped me, he took the obsession away, and it became profound to me that now you got to do some work. And the work wasn't outside. You have to uncover your lies. Right. And I had help. You had to uncover my self-lies. I had to uncover some of the self-destructive thinking. I had to rebuild my credit and credibility. Instead of telling people I would pay them back, I had to actually do it. And I knew that if it meant I had $100 and I owed out 100, I kept 10 and I broke the 90 up. In other words, it's the principle here. And I made sure I took care of every bill. I took care of everybody. And it took years to rebuild. I have an 800-something score today, but it took years before I even got to the point where I own home, I own treatment center. I do these things. But it was those fundamental things in the beginning. I found out that if I was going to change my life, that no one said it was going to be comfortable. And I'm like, what do you mean comfortable? I realized that all my life I was always seeking comfort, didn't want to deal with being uncomfortable, didn't understand that being patient meant that I had to wait. If I wanted something, it meant that you couldn't have it right away. In other words, the values that my mom put in me that were some early on started to kick in. And then some of the men that were helping me to grow would tell me the truth now. They wouldn't co-sign my BS. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't tell me what I wanted to hear. They would tell me what I needed to hear. So another piece that people need to hear is that if we're going to change, we have to remember we need others to help us, because we're still garbled with some of the thoughts and the negative thoughts that we have on ourselves. Others need to see us. Others need to help us to see ourselves. So I started to accept this change. And then I remember after about a year, I'm a personal trainer now. I'm running my own business. I'm paying back all my bills, all the child support I owed was over 100 and something thousand. I paid back every dime of the money. And then even some of the kids that had grown, I went back and I in tears often, and I told everybody how sorry I was for the things that I had done to them and the things that I had done in my life. When I say done to them, even missing, not being an influence in their life. Right. And I made these amends to people, man, even when it hurt, even when they told me to get your little, with 4-letter words up out my face. Instead of retaliating, I simply accepted their response because I knew that I needed to clean my side of the street. Right. And I did that. And that hurt sometimes because humility, right, will go against that, don't you know who you think I am ego. Right. It didn't matter. I had to take the humiliation when somebody didn't accept my apology. I had to let them say what they needed. Some of my older children at the time, who now have forgiven me, but some at the time said, you are no good this and you're no good that. And I had to humbly take that, realizing that they had a right to feel that. But I paid back all the child support over the years. I started to make my life right and start to pay my bills the way I was supposed to pay my bills. I started to give up the habits of, don't you know who you think I am thinking, meaning that I'm going to do this and do that so I can get your validation. And I started to affirm that I was okay within myself because I started to dispel some of the faulty beliefs. So I was given a little encouragement to go back to school, very scared, because I would do some speaking engagement. People said, man, you got a great story, put some education behind it. Maybe it'll bring some credibility to you. Not thinking that I was trying to be credible in, I just simply trying to make my life better, because I had known I had lived a chunk of my life in a very maladaptive way. So I went back to school. Somebody said, just go to the admissions office, apply, don't think about it, just jump in the water.
Right.
So the principle of faith started to come alive in my life. That people always, we talk about this ideal of faith, this concept of faith, which really has no meaning unless it's backed up with action. And I started to realize that faith meant I also had to be uncomfortable. What do I mean by uncomfortability? That when we're making changes in our life, not trying to change something outside. See, that's a false perception that we can have, that we can change people. We can't change anybody but ourselves. I started to recognize that the fear that I was experiencing the most was simply fear inside. And I started to overcome my fear. So I got my first A in class at Glendale College, and I went up and graduated there with a 4.0 average. And it gave me the desire to go to get my bachelor's degree. I went on to get my bachelor's degree, and I graduated with a 4.0 GPA from Pacific Oaks College. And I remember mentioning these schools because these schools are some of the most profound experiences I've had. They're really, really good schools. When you look them up, you'll see what I'm saying. They challenge you. And then I went to Pacific Oaks master's graduate program, and I got my master's in human development. At first, I was going to get my marriage and family degree, but I was too afraid to get a doctorate. And that's why I decided to go get a doctorate, because I was afraid. I decided to do the opposite thing of what the feeling told me. And this is kind of some of the mentors told me. If you feel fear, you do opposite anyway and walk through it. And that's why my thing about letting fear be what it is, because it is real. We're all going to be afraid of something to some degree as we walk our journey through life. But don't let fear, determine who you are. Just simply walk through it and achieve and go to the other side. So I graduated with my master's in human development. At this point, I've gotten my credit together, and I started to feel grateful when I was broke sometimes, when my cupboards were full and all my bills were paid. All of that, I had a paradigm shift, realizing that all my primary needs are taken care of. So there's a lot to be grateful for, even if I don't have a lot of money at that time to go out and to do the movies and go here and there. But the sense of knowing that I took care of my responsibilities. And so then I applied to the Chicago Professional School of Psychology and a couple other schools. But the Chicago school seemed that they had a way that I could go on campus and do night and weekend classes. And I went on and got my doctorate in clinical psychology. And I graduated again at the top of my class with a 4.0 GPA at the Chicago school. And there was some other 4.0 GPA students too. So not to discredit other people, there's some other people who graduated with excellence as well. However, in a doctorate program, you got to maintain it better than a 3.5, even to pretty at that school you did to even stay in the program. And along the way, some miracles and some things that happened I probably don't want to talk about right now, but the truth be told is that I was able to get incorporated, start a company called TheConnectorive Treatment Center. We first started out helping addicts and alcoholics, and then now we have opened up new locations where we also we help people with mental health, anxiety, PTSD, trauma. I'm blessed to now have a staff of 12 full-time employees, a medical doctor. Here I am now signing paychecks for psychologists and medical doctors, and they work for me, and the Creator has opened up the world to give me bank accounts, that I even know when I put money in the bank today, what's mine and what's not mine. When you got a staff to pay, you may be able to see the funds, but the responsibility comes when you know that those funds don't belong to you, that you have to pay your payroll. So I think the moral of the story is this. Sometimes our decisions early on cause or can be the antecedent, if you will, the beginning of some profound and some even incomprehensible things that we do throughout our life. But we all have the ability to still change the choice and the trajectory of our life by the first choice that we made that may have made a trajectory that didn't put us in the right place. We all have the choice to ask for forgiveness and seek it, first of all, to others we have hurt, whether they like it or accept it or not. We all have the choice to own responsibility and say, hey, I was broken. I made mistakes. I was a liar. I was a cheat. I was a thief. I hurt people. I'm saying that I did do that, but I also know that I'm great today. I'm a king today. I've forgiven myself. I've forgiven others. I hold no malice against my mom and dad. I have no one who has abused me as a kid renting space in my head anymore. I have totally and exclusively forgiven everything that has ever happened to me, or even my perception of what has happened to me. I am free
Never
today.
gave you peace.
I am
Forgive.
free today from people. And what I mean by that is that even when it's hard to forgive, I ask for the willingness to forgive, because forgiveness is not for them, it's for me.
Right,
And I
exactly.
want to be able to be a servant today that can help. So today, you know, I've been graced to give to lots of causes. We do lots of scholarships. I do weekend retreats for men. And the beauty of it is not even some of it, sometimes I get paid for what I do and sometimes I don't. The beauty of a gift is that you just love being who you are. I love being who I am today, and I love myself today, even though others might try to remind me of 1991 and 92. I'll give you a hug and I'll say, look, I got to go, because I don't live in morbid reflection anymore. I know I made a lot of mistakes. I know that I hurt people
I
along the
love the
way.
way you told your story, because I often tell people I'm doing a piece on self-esteem, and I say you start with digging a hole,
Right.
and that is that where I in the community where I'm at is going through a change.
Yes.
They're building condos,
Yes.
right? And the first step to building something,
Yes.
is the hole.
You
And what
gotta
they
get
do,
it right.
dig the hole and you get rid of the trash, the
That's right.
debris, all that trash and garbage and everything. You get rid of that. So now you got something, and then you fill it up with good stuff.
Right. Right.
So I see
And
what you did.
don't
Those amends, those things you did, and then once you kind of cleared that, at the same time you were adding value to yourself. You're giving yourself educating, and as you get, and I like the fact that see, when you go through what you went through, and then your education is in the field that you're in addiction, like that, you're like an expert on solving your problem. You are like the main man in order to do that. That makes an excellent example to talk to other people in terms of what you're doing.
Well, my hope is this. Remember, so when we say that, the responsibility piece and trying to change is don't go it alone. That's number one. Don't go it alone. And I never get above myself to recognize that although I have been able to overcome and achieve things beyond my wildest dream, owning homes, owning businesses, being an employer, doesn't even make sense to a guy who couldn't even keep $1 in his pocket to be able to walk in a bank today and just sign my name and get something. But the character building. When people say that they forgive themselves, there's a fundamental ideal behind self-forgiveness. It means I have to now take action. See, I could say I forgive myself, but if my behaviors are not lining up to, as you say, produce better results for myself. That's why I never tell people what success means. Somebody can have $350 million, 10 houses, 10 cars, and people waiting on them hand and foot. That may be material success, but when you go home, are you comfortable to turn everything off and to be okay with yourself? I don't care how many muscles you have, how many facelifts you get, how many butt lifts you get, everything you can do out external. If there's not an internal understanding that I'm okay, that I was made and I was created, which means I've been loved by someone. The world taught me. If I learned hate, if I learned self-hate, the world taught me that. I had to unlearn that mess with the help of principle-driven people. Remember that. Principles don't subscribe to feelings. And what I had to learn, and now I embrace it, that whenever I'm restless or irritable or discontent, I have to understand that means there's some distortions going on in my thinking. Trust me, it is. I promise you. Anybody today that's listening, if you're restless and you're irritable and you're discontent, I will challenge you to look in the mirror. And if you got to, do it with someone else and explore the truth. Either you're not accepting something the way it is, and it may not feel good the way it is because of, your expectations of what you want. There's some fear, and there's definitely some selfishness or self-centeredness. Now, I know that people are challenging me this, but I will challenge the best minds in the world on this. If I am totally uncomfortable with myself, or something is uncomfortable to me, and I'm restless, and I'm irritable, and I'm discontent, the answer is not outside. It has to go inside first. And this is what I've learned to embrace. Now, I'm not saying I don't get restless, irritable, discontent on you. Of course I do. But recovery, not drug and alcohol addiction recovery, of course, all recovery from anything that's maladaptive, that's destructive, means that I have to be prepared to feel uncomfortable. And usually when I'm feeling uncomfortable, it's the uncomfortability of changing my paradigm, the way that I'm thinking at any given moment, like it or not. Recovery says if I follow principles and I'm principle driven, no matter how much money I have, if I'm principle driven, I can be okay with myself, because at the end of the day, I was made. I'm loved no matter how much money I have or don't have. Yes, it's good to have some things. I have some things in my life, but it's about purpose. It's not to say, hey, look at me. It's to say, look what God did in my life. Yes, people say, well, you did it. God didn't do that. All right. Let me get out that debate.
Right.
I believe in God. I believe that he gave me the power, if you will, to walk in my humanity. He took the obsession from drugs off me. Yes, he did. But the responsibility was for me to start practicing principles to change how I was thinking and to change how I was behaving. It had to be intentional, Mike.
That you were concealing the God within you. I think apparently you had skills and the intelligence 4.0. I mean, you were just holding yourself back. It was you that was blocking your success all that time.
Yes.
But this is my philosophy is you had to go on that trail. Some people may listen to your story and says, wow, that was a lot of education. You get a doctorate all those years, right? That wasn't the real education. That was like the icing. The real education was what you got in the street that brought you up to the point where you have this passion in the understanding of your transformation, right?
I had somebody actually.
Therefore, now you can convey it to other people.
Yeah, I had somebody actually tell me this in my family. I'm not going to say. Said, man, by the time you become a doctor, you're going to be 50 years old. It's somebody in my family kind of like hating on me, I guess, because they saw me in school. And so I said, well, is it a good thing to be a doctor at 50 or not have one at 50?
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying? And it had nothing to do with what I'm saying is that I was on a track. I had done so much in my life that put me in a seamlessly hopeless state of mind, body, and spirit, that when I had that, if you call that obsession, lifted off me, I guess all the morals that my mom and the values that my mom and even some that my dad put in me started to come to fruition. Because being uncomfortable is just simply the way life is today. Being uncomfortable means I got to go manipulate you now to get something.
But my point is this though. See, Keith Marshall to Dr. Keith Marshall is still Keith Marshall.
Yes.
It's like the Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
At the end, they tell Dorothy, you always had the power to take yourself home. Right? You always had that power in you. And then all of a sudden, through your path, you discovered that magnificence inside you. You managed to tap that. But like a lot of times, that magnificence is represented as pain and fear.
Yeah,
right?
I
like the way you said that you took that pain and the struggle and you utilized it as
Mike, I cried often at night when people don't know it. At night when I was in school wanting to quit, realizing that I had 14 children who were watching me. Some that I didn't have a relationship with to this day are probably the only regrets I'll have in my life. But I know that I've been able to leave some type of legacy because one, I've connected with them. 2, I've asked for the forgiveness. 3, I decided that I'm not a talker anymore. I'm going to do this thing called life. I love people, but there are many people I don't like, but I love everybody. I don't dislike people. I can walk in a room today. I don't care how much money you have or you don't have. I feel that the least of us deserves to be the very best. You know what I mean? I appreciate people today because I don't need it as much as they're validated. And I say as much because we can still have a sting, if you will, where the low self-esteem or they, feeling rejected will pop up, but it doesn't run my life. And I ain't trying to prove, I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone anymore in my life. I've been set free, 1, from forgiveness from anyone that I perceived hurt me. 2, I forgave myself, not by what I said, by what I had to do to overcome and make changes in my life. I will never, ever feel that it's wrong to want to earn a living. I can say that I've made some millions in my life today, and it has nothing to do with pride and ego, Mike, but there was a purpose for the money. Today, my purpose is to take care of people. My purpose is to take care of my family. I'm 57. I know I got more days behind me than I got in front of me. So my ego, if you will, I believe that the Creator allowed me to sleep behind dumpsters, to sleep in cardboard boxes, so that He could, in His love, smash my ego, smash my pride, humble me down to make me sweetly reasonable enough to hear somebody, to take some direction, to make the corrections that I need to make in my life, to be principle driven and not feelings driven, although I can, just like anybody else at any given moment, make a decision based on the feeling. But my spirit today, the biggest thing for me today is that if I do tell a lie, I feel bad about it, where before there was no conscience of it. So I want to fix it. So it's not that anything but becoming more conscious and aware, because I don't want to hurt others, but I will invariably hurt somebody again in my life by something I say, hopefully not what I do. But I still today, though, believe that we all are going to hurt each other. The thing is, do you feel bad about it today? And today, yes, I do. If I hurt you, I feel bad about it. I want to make it right. I want to make it correct, even if you don't receive me. But I also forgive myself over and over too. I don't beat myself up with baseball bats anymore. And I'm not walking around in the doom and the gloom because you want to remind me in 1991, you was a thief, you stole my earrings, you stole money out of my bank account, you did, but then you were willing to give it back. Or there's some things I still want to fix with some people in my life that I'm hoping that I could take some money one day and just really go bless them with it once I have my company, when it's running itself. When my money is actually making its own money, then I can feel free to do some other things in the universe that I also want to do to add to some causes, like as I do now with St. Jude Hospital, LA Mission. I believe in these causes because I've been a recipient of some of this stuff and I see what it's done. So I do that. But at the end of the day,
let's pivot right here. I want you to answer this question for our viewers. Our viewers are aspiring entrepreneurs, young students, and some of them look at Dr. Keith Marshall and says, that's who I want to be. And they may not have an addiction problem, but everybody has a story or a struggle in life. So what advice do you have somebody, not necessarily addict, but somebody in terms of becoming a professional in the field?
Good question, Mike. Yeah. Because remember, when somebody is an addict or an alcoholic anyway, that's not the problem. That's a symptom of it. I think this is where I believe that we are universally connected. We all have this universal connection. At any given day, at any given time, there can be some type of self-destructive thinking that can or will creep in, even subtle, if it makes you uncomfortable, just simply being in a relationship with somebody who maybe is not attracted to you or want you, but your head says that you got to have them and you can't even accept it. In other words, we are all at some point in our life are going to react to some form of self-destructive thinking, albeit as minor as possible, because we're not perfect, we're human. And if we behave and we act on our feelings in any way where we hurt people, whether it's verbal or nonverbal, or even in some of the evil thinking that could come upon us, then that says that we're universally connected. We're going to make mistakes. My advice to anybody is first of all, is this, that if you have a goal, you have to go after the goal and understand it may require things, because you don't set goals and go alone. That means you got people and you got advisors in your life that are going to help you. And the part that's going to be hard is not them or change, but my resistance to it. So I have to go in knowing that I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to be uncomfortable. So the first suggestion is embrace the uncomfortability. Understand that uncomfortability is all a part of the process. That's the first suggestion I would, not advice, but suggestion to people too, is to embrace the understanding that you're going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If you've been working off of one way of thinking and a goal requires you to take action, and if it takes action, it means I still have to change some form of my thinking, there's no question there's going to be uncomfortability. I suggest that you embrace the ideal of being patient. Patience doesn't ask you, do you like it or not? It's just simply a byproduct of taking the action and just experiencing the feelings of not getting it right away, or it's not happening right away. My next suggestion is to be okay being you. Be okay being you. If I walk into a social setting that has 100 people, and as soon as if I believe that I'm feeling uncomfortable, I have to remember my uncomfortability is more about me and not what I perceive about others, either the way they're looking at me or not looking at me. If I go to dance and somebody doesn't want to dance with me, is that about me or is it about them? If I ask somebody would they like to talk and they don't want to talk, is it about me or about them? It's never about them. It's always about me. I have to be able to accept myself wherever I am, doing whatever I am doing, without arrogance or cockiness, but believing that it's okay to be me. And if it means go in the bathroom and tell yourself, take a deep breath, man, I don't know anybody here, but you know what? I'm okay. I'm okay. I don't need to prove nothing.
So people, in terms of that, in terms of failures and attempts and stuff, rejection, you talk about rejection.
Right.
I said, in order to close a deal, you got to get rejected 7 times.
Right.
So what does that mean? That means that you pursue rejection, because you know you're getting closer and closer. Right. And then if you make that a habit of pursuing, then you become relentless.
And I think, when we talk about rejection too, Mike, it just depends. Like if there's something that's not, I got to also examine and explore what it is that I'm going after. If I keep getting rejected on something, I also have to look at the fundamental understanding of myself. Is that really the path that I want to be going? Am I looking at what's external, or is there something internal driving my passion and my goal and my dream? If I'm going after something external, it might not be lining up with my creator's will. So I can't go after things based on what other people have. I have to go after what it is that I believe about myself, especially if it doesn't hurt people, because I don't believe that it's in the will of the creator for us to seek or be ambitious for things that are going to hurt people, steal from people, rob people, cheat people, manipulate people. If those factors are in play while I'm going after what I'm going after, I don't believe that is the creator's purpose. That's my own selfish and self-centered drive. So right. If I'm going to be successful in life, I believe it does, whatever success means to you, I believe I have to become successful at understanding myself, understanding my limitations, being less hard on myself and more loving to other people. Then I think I could be more useful. I think I could be more purposeful. I think I could be more whole in my life. I think that we all measure success differently. So if someone ever came to me and asked me, what success is, I would say, well, what is it for you? What is it for you? Your success may not be what mine is. I don't need 10 cars, and 10 houses. Now, if I had the opportunity to have 10 cars and 10 houses, would I get them? I don't think so. Maybe I'll get 4. I don't know. What I'm saying is your success has to be determined by you understanding who you are in context with who you are internally. So you got to dispel the faultiness of who you think you are and embrace who you are, even some of the faulty beliefs that has driven your life. If you're in a relationship with anybody and you're uncomfortable, don't blame them. You have to look in the mirror and find out, why are you accepting being a doormat? Why are you accepting being talked to a certain way? Why are you accepting something that's uncomfortable for you? You can't blame them. We want to. We have to look at ourselves no matter what. And as much as I preach this or teach this,
say that like you being in love with somebody, but really you in love with the feeling that you have with that person, right?
Possibly, because if I don't love myself first, and I'm not talking about arrogance or prideful love, nurturing. If I can't nurture me, there's no way I'm going to nurture you, because I haven't already affirmed myself. I'm going to keep seeking to manipulate or get you to affirm me. I mean, that's just universal. If I don't believe I love myself internally, I can't show you something I'm not giving myself. It can't happen. I may show you expressions and I may do things that show you I do have some love. But if I can't love myself or won't learn to love myself, I can't give away something I haven't given myself. And that means that
you know what?
The more you can forgive others.
Fear. I know I'm gonna have to bring you back.
Okay. All right.
But let me give you like a final thought to leave with our audience, and then you coming back. I'm probably gonna put you on a webinar or something, and we can talk about different subjects. Because now we know, now the audience knows who you are, and now we're gonna we can get into more or less some kind of solutions for some of the problems that they're doing mentally or whatever.
Right.
So final thought.
Well, let fear be what it is, meaning that embrace it, because I don't care who you are, I don't care how much money you have or don't have. We are going to experience some form of fear in our life throughout our day, every day. But don't let fear determine your outcome. Meaning, if I allow fear to dominate me, invariably, meaning always, it will always put me in a position to never experience the trueness and the reality that my life could bring to me, because I'm allowing fear. I would just encourage you to look at yourself when you're disturbed and stop blaming people, places, and things. I know it's a tendency for us all to do that, but at the end of the day, I have to look inside for the solution to the things that are uncomfortable for my life. Okay.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Great, my brother. That was awesome.
Yes, sir,
Good
brother.
information. Great.
Yes. Hey, man, let's digest this.
Right. This program is about spotlighting exceptional individuals doing magnificent things, and people hearing their story. And you definitely are in there. I mean, are one of those exceptional individuals with an incredible story that can inspire people to overcome. What you describe makes some of the things in some people's lives like molehills, and because the mountain that you.
Yeah, because I think we do it. We put these expectations on ourselves sometimes too, Mike. That just, and we all do it. And then when we don't live up to them, you know what I mean? I just think, just like what you're doing right now is extraordinary. The fact that you're trying to create a platform, right? That to me is totally driven by principle stuff, not feelings. Ain't nothing in here that you're trying to, what it appears to me is that you're trying to extrapolate from people. What is it that's helping you to live out, be magnificent?
Exactly.
And every one of us still has a level where we can develop more in magnificence in our life. So your word, this is some prophecy to your book, brother. I think what you're doing right now is actually living out what the book is. So the selling, it's going to come. The ideal in what you're doing and trying to the connector, I even love it, because each one teach one, each one need one to grow. So I may, that's why I'm glad you also put that point in there, that not about just drugs and alcohol. That's why I made it real clear. Man,
Right.
drugs and alcohol just a symptom. It was never usually the problem anyway. It's living with myself. Self-destructive thinking is self-destructive. For self-destructive thinking may lead some people to drugs and alcohol, may lead some people to excessive masturbation, may lead some people to kleptomania behavior, may lead some people to child abuse, may lead some people to spousal abuse. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
People don't realize self-destructive thinking is the thing that caused me to get high, and that became the symptom. That ain't the problem. The problem was always rooted in the self-destructive thinking. I like the thing that's thinking.
Talk about not only how you control your own stuff, but one of the things is you're going to run into those self-destructive people and then bring them into your life, and then you have to know how to disconnect. I always say this in terms of, I said, when somebody asks me, well, I want to change the quality of my life, I just say,
that's a big sport. Are you ready for the ride?
I mean, you don't go, if you want to be poor, then hang around poor people, because they know exactly how to do that.
They sure do.
Listen to wealthy people, how they think, because it's totally different.
That's right.
Totally different.
And
right?
Listen, that's the most powerful thing that you said. That's why the connector idea is important. You connect with focus-driven people. You may not get everything from their focus, and you may not even live out your focus, but you will definitely have a taproot, a foundation of focus, because you're talking to people that if anybody does anything in their life, anything valuable in their life, that where they're showing that they're having love for themselves and they're trying to project some energy in the universe that's positive, they have been around some focus-driven people. There's no way, because you can't become like that by yourself. You know what I mean? So, like you said, people who have the prescription for staying in self-destructive thinking and a poverty-driven mind, you hang around them, and that's where you'll be. That's where you'll stay, in a poverty-stricken mind. You don't have to have a whole lot of money to be rich. You can have money to take care of yourself, but you're rich inside because you have an enduring life that's meaningful. You know what I mean? So I think that's
Napoleon Hill said success is the progressive realization of your goals.
That's right.
So it he really didn't center on, and here's a millionaire, he didn't center on wealth, but he's saying you having the power to create stuff, right? And knowing that you can set a goal and do it. Man, how powerful is that?
Right.
We'll get into all that later on. I appreciate you.
Yes, sir, brother.
My audience, this is Dr. Keith Marshall. And this is Michael Rice, aka The Connector, saying, keep connecting.
God bless you.
Connect with your mind, with your body, and your spirit. And then join us, because we're building a network of magnificent individuals.
Yes, sir. All right, buddy. We'll talk. All right, we'll see you soon. All right. Bye-bye.
All right.